we're going to talk about Chapter 5, which is on the progressive movement. And the progressive movement is around 1890 to 1919. That's about when World War I ended. And so historians have broken up that 2-3 decade time period as a time of intense change throughout the country. And progressivism came about because of the excesses of the Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age, again, was where you had folks making gobs of money, and they didn't have to pay any taxes, and you had other people, other workers who would earn maybe $1 a day. And so as this influx of immigrants came in between the 1880s, 1890s, 1900, huge numbers of Eastern Europeans, lots of folks coming up, from down south, that there became a sense that we're losing what America is. And the corruption of government is something that we need to take care of. And the corruption of corporations is also something we need to take care of. Government needs to be more responsive to the needs of the people. And so all of these things mixed together and became what is known today as the progressive movement, that government would be more responsive to the needs of individuals. I think one of the folks that's most well known during this period is Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was a larger-than-life figure. He was an individual that believed in physical activity, that if you wanted to meet with the president, he would often meet you out at Rock Creek Park, and what he would do is start at one spot and then walk in a straight line. And if that meant going over rocks, he would go over rocks. If that meant wading through streams, he would do that. And if you wanted to talk with him about something, that was important, you needed to be right next to him while he's walking along. There was journalism at this time called the muckrakers, and they would go in and sort of shine a spotlight on problems, like, for example, on the slaughterhouse and how we got the nation's food supply, how there were rats running around and they would fall into the vats of when people were making stuff, and the unsanitary conditions. And supposedly Franklin Roosevelt was sitting reading a book called The Jungle, and while he was eating lunch, a big steak lunch, and said, "My God," and jumped up and ran to Congress, and they passed the Food and Drug Administration bill. This was the time where the income tax was added to our Constitution. The thinking was that it was your patriotic duty to pay income taxes, because prior to the income tax constitutional amendment, how did the government get money to do roads and bridges and schools and stuff like that? They got most of their money actually from alcohol sales and imports, and they needed another revenue stream. And so the income tax constitutional amendment was passed in order to start to fund some of these projects. 1919, women got the right to vote. Why weren't women allowed to vote? And the answer to that is actually because the theory was that women would not be independent voters, that in order to vote, you need to make up your own mind, and women would do just what their husbands told them to do. I mean, you think about that today and the utter nonsense that is, but that was the prevailing theory of the time. You had direct election of senators, another constitutional amendment that came during this time. And perhaps most interestingly is the problem with alcohol. And they passed the Prohibition Amendment that outlawed alcohol in the country. And so we'll talk about what that means in the next chapter. But this was an idea that we're trying to bring morality into government, into good governance. Okay? So I hope you enjoy this chapter.